When you start your first business, your location independent Alpha 2.0 business that will set you free and get you location independent and free you from your 9-to-5 job and get you more internationally mobile and things like that. When you set up that first company, you need to sell to businesses, not people. That's called B2B, business to business, instead of B2C, business to consumer. Why? There's a whole pile of reasons, and I'm going to explain these because likely if you have an idea in your head of a business that you want to start, most likely you have a B2C idea because those are more fun and those are more interesting and those are part of your passion or whatever. The problem is starting a B2C business is much more difficult to make money quickly. If you want to get from zero to the money as quickly as possible, which is the entire goal here, the Western world's in a state of collapse, AI is right around the corner, etc., you need to start a business that is B2B, a business that sells to other businesses. Let me give you all the reasons why this is a much better play, and at the end of the video, I will tell you exactly what to do if you want to start a B2C business. So, number one, top of the list, you can charge higher prices when you sell to companies. When you sell to people, that's their money. And people are very tight and very careful about how they spend their money. Whereas when you sell to a company, the person you're selling to, even if that person is the owner of the business, it's not quite their money. It's the company's money. So they are less concerned about things like price. Are they concerned about price? Of course. But they're less concerned when you sell to people. Plus, I don't know if you knew this might be a shock, businesses make more money than people, right? You have businesses that make millions of dollars a year, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, billions of dollars a year. Not many human beings make that level of income. So when you quote a price of $5,000 to a person, that's a lot of money, even if that person's a higher income person, right? But if you quote a price of $5,000 or whatever, $10,000 to a company, it's a drop in the bucket. So you can charge more money for doing the same amount of work when you're working with companies. Number two, for the same reason, you get less price resistance. So if you're on the phone trying to sell your thing, and if it's your first business, you should be selling consulting or a business service, one of those two things, because you'll get from zero to the money the fastest with those two. When you're doing that, you're going to get less price resistance because, again, it's not their money, A, and they have access to a lot more money. When you're talking to people, and I've run companies with B2B and B2C both throughout my business career. I have both right now. Trust me, when you're talking to people, they will start to negotiate and say, I don't know, and could you drop the price, and what about this, and can I make payments? And you're not going to get any of that or very little of that or much less than that when you sell to companies. It's just an easier sale. Number three, companies are easier to work with as customers. People don't realize this until you go into business. You figure this out really quick. Because again, I've had B2B companies in my life. I've had B2C companies in my life. And I will tell you for a fact, and everyone else who's done this like me will tell you the same thing. It is easier to work with customers who are companies. They are less demanding. You're going to get less complaints. There's less bullshit involved. They are more likely to do what you tell them if you're working with them in a consulting fashion or even as a business service where there's something advisory going on. The odds of them doing what they tell you to do are actually much higher than when you work with a human being who can have a bad day at work or go through a divorce or have a problem in his relationships or with his kids or with his job or whatever. It is a much easier experience, customer relations experience, working with companies. Can you have good experiences working with people and selling people? Yes, I've had many of them. But I've had a lot of trouble working with customers also. Whereas I have very few problems, if ever. We're talking like 1-2% working with companies, because I've worked with a lot of companies. It's just an easier experience. The dynamic of the relationship is different because it's less personal. It's just easier. And again, they're working with, in a corporate structure, when it's not their money, versus a person, it's very personal, right? So you have more emotions involved when you work with people. It's just how it works. Number four, along those lines, less complaints. So, not only will they be less demanding, but companies are going to complain less. People in companies you work with as customers, clients. I guess if you have a B2C business, they're customers. And if you have companies, they're called clients. It doesn't really matter. But when you're working with clients who are companies, less complaining. When you work with people, you just have to plan on, and again, I have a pretty big B2C company, and I have some B2B businesses as well. You just need to plan on a percentage of that customer base arguing with you and bitching and moaning and complaining about stupid shit, even if it's not your fault. Matter of fact, in most cases, it won't be your fault. Doesn't matter. That's what it's like working with people. They complain a lot. Crap like that. They ask for refunds. Again, even if you're doing everything perfectly, if you sell products or services to individuals, you're going to have a percentage ask for a refund, even if they're being scam artists and they're just ripping you off and want something for free. That happens all the time as a percentage of the customer base when you deal with consumers, individuals in your company. Where you're dealing with companies, it is microscopically rare to work with a company who says, I want my money back. That's very rare. Can it happen? Sure. But it's extremely rare and extremely unusual. And also the complaining. Can you get complaints working with companies? Of course you can. But in the rare times you do, I can tell you from my experience and the experience of a lot of business owners I've worked with, usually because you screwed up and it really is a valid complaint. You screwed up and they're complaining because you screwed up. Whereas when you work with consumers and individual people, you'll get complaints about all kinds of things that have nothing to do with you or anyone on your team. Just reality. Number 5, it is easier to target prospects for your marketing efforts when they're companies, because companies, in most cases, most niches, have to be seen. They have to have a website with emails and phone numbers. When you call the phone number, they have to answer the phone number, things like that, right? How do you find people? Yeah, it's tough. Even if you narrowly niche on a certain kind of person, what are you gonna do? Go on a Facebook group and say, hey, somebody, buy my thing. It's tough. It's doable, but it's a lot harder. So marketing, cold marketing, is much more complicated, much more difficult when you sell to people. Can you do it? Yes. But it's harder, it costs more money, it's less cut and dried. When you're selling to businesses, it's very quick and easy, comparatively. You can find their addresses within a few hours doing some Google searches or using AI tools or hiring a scraper. It's much easier to get those names, email addresses, phone numbers, and addresses, what you need, whatever you need to do your marketing when you're selling to companies rather than when you sell to humans. It just is. Number 6, it is easier to sell and close the deal when you're dealing with companies. For example, if you're doing phone sales, if you're going to call someone's cell phone, are they going to answer that number? No, they're not. Good luck doing outbound phone sales to individuals. Is it possible? I guess. But no one answers their phones these days. I don't answer my phone. Why would I answer my phone if it's not a phone number I know? Whereas companies, guess what? They're required to answer the phone. They have to. Now, they have gatekeepers. It's not as easy as I'm saying, but you get my point. The path to get to people who are decision makers, often, unless you're dealing with giant corporations, which you shouldn't do if you're a new business owner, is easier to get to and easier to close than it is on people. You call some random guy, so his phone number, and he doesn't answer. If he answers, he's like, all kinds, I can tell all kinds of stories. They're on the way to the Thanksgiving dinner, or they're in the middle of dinner with their family, or they're out on a date with his girlfriend and he can't talk. And you don't have those problems when you're talking to companies because they have to answer the phone during business hours, and that's the only time you would call. So it's actually easier not only to target for marketing, it's easier to close the deal when you're dealing with companies. So, oh, by the way, it's also true in many respects, sometimes companies have to answer their DMs. They have to answer their support lines. They have to, in some cases, not all, they have to answer their emails. Does that sound like people? People don't have to answer shit, right? Okay, so if you want to get from zero to the money as quickly as humanly possible, which is the entire point here, you want to sell to companies, not people. But Caleb, I really want to sell to people because my dream is to sell this thing to pregnant mothers who whatever. Okay, great. Here's what you do. This is what I did. This is what Billy did. This is what all the people I work with have done. Your first business that sets you free so you can quit your 9-to-5 job and get internationally mobile, be able to move or travel wherever you want, do whatever you want in the world. Do that first, selling to companies. Your B2C idea of selling to people, do that second. Do that as your second business or your third business or whatever, if by then you still want to start a second company, and you may be making so much money you may not care at that point. But if you still want to start that business, great. Do it as an experienced, successful business owner who doesn't have a stupid 9-to-5 job and is living a free life. By the way, coincidentally, not coincidentally, this is exactly what I did. I have several companies right now selling to people. But I promise you, that was not the first company I started. The first company, the first full-time company I started, was back in the mid-1990s, and that was as a consultant selling to companies. The second company I started was selling to companies. The third company I started was selling to companies. The fourth company, I started dabbling a little bit in B2C instead of B2B. So I was already making, and sometimes I have people ask me this question, well, is the only reason you're making money because you sell courses online? I was making multi-six figures as a corporate consultant selling to companies before I made one penny selling anything online to individuals. That's the model you want to follow. Start your first business selling to companies, make a certain amount of money, quit your stupid job, get free. Then if you still want to, then as your second business, when you know what you're doing and you can set your own schedule and travel anywhere in the world you want, then start your B2C, your B2C idea, then it works fine. Make sense? But you want to get from zero to the money as quickly as possible. That is very hard to do when you sell to consumers. You want to do that with business. If you want to work with me on how to get that first business started so you can be making money within a few months, thousands of dollars, click the link below. It's a button or the description of this video or in the pinned comment.